How's it going, everyone? How are you doing today? I'm going over my top 5 highlights of the week for the 5th week. It felt like just like yesterday I was doing last week's, but this week we have some interesting ones. A couple are like personal, not personal to me, but stuff that, one in particular was a person that I've been, watching for a while. And, when I used to play FIFA, I used to use him all the time. And we'll get right into it. My number one is, of course, probably the biggest news of the week is Project Big Picture. This was proposed recently by Manchester United and Liverpool and was recently rejected by the Premier League. This is essentially a plan to overhaul the Premier League, and it would have given a lot more power to the bigger clubs, in particular the Big Six. The Big Six being Manchester City, Manchester United, Arsenal, Spurs, Liverpool, and Chelsea. Now, this would have given them more power in things along the lines of control over broadcasting deals, control over the cost control sort of measures like financial fair play. And the craziest one to me is even ownership of other clubs. It was proposed that to make immediate emergency funding of £250 million available to EFL clubs who haven't had the match day income that would normally really benefit their club, in particular the smaller ones, and a further £100 million to the FA. And it also laid it out where the EFL would receive 25% of future Premier League broadcast earnings. And essentially with this plan, they would have used a short-term solution which would have solved the financial problems right now. They're using that in order to restructure everything, and after rejecting it, the Premier League did take a step forward and agreed to give £50 million in grants and interest-free loans to League One and League Two sides, which is huge for them because, like I mentioned in it might have been 2 weeks ago in the highlights of the week, that they're really struggling right now, both the League One and League Two sides, and it's even rumored that 6 League Two clubs are going to be done. So that money's going to be huge. It should keep them going at least for the rest of the season, and talks are still ongoing with championship sides as to any support that they need, and there's still ongoing talks on how to restructure the Premier League, which I don't know. This whole situation to me honestly just kind of seemed like a huge power grab attempt to just try and take control of things that they really shouldn't be controlling. I guess I don't really appreciate them trying to gain control purely because they're more popular and the bigger teams in the Premier League. And honestly, just looking at surface level, maybe down the line, beyond the surface level, it would have really benefited the Premier League, but just on the surface level alone, it just seems like it would have widened the gap that is just starting to close as we're witnessing in the Premier League right now. And I know finances right now are a huge issue, and maybe this plan would have solved now, but down the line, how beneficial would it really have been? And I don't know. This whole plan just seemed really fishy to me, and I'm kind of glad that the Premier League rejected it, to be perfectly honest. Now, moving on to my number 2 is a bit more of a fun one. Adebayo Akinfenwa, who is 38 years old, is somewhat of a cult icon in soccer, more so FIFA, largely due to YouTube videos that had come out years ago about him and pretty much shot him up to fame. And he's honestly been on the grind for a long time. I think he's been playing since 2001, and he's still going. He's currently with the Wycombe Wanderers in the Championship, who just got promoted to the Championship for the first time last season, and that was huge for them. But I mean, in his career, he has made 720 total appearances, scoring 226 times. He's been around for a while. He's played for a lot of different teams, and he has been on the grind. You got to respect the grind. Now, Akinfenwa is currently holding talks with Vince McMahon of the WWE. He's holding talks with the WWE to potentially make a huge switch. It's interesting to see a football player, who's late in their career, potentially about to retire, making that kind of career switch. It's interesting. I mean, I know Maybe it won't be as physically demanding in the WWE. I don't really know. I don't watch wrestling, so I don't know. But it's not that surprising. This dude is huge, as you could probably tell. I'll have a picture somewhere right here. I should, at least. And you could tell that that he's fit enough to get into this world. And for me personally, I think this would be a huge business opportunity for the WWE, because he, like I mentioned, he does have a bit of a cult following. People who just respect him, and again, from FIFA and stuff like that. By the way, he actually is the strongest player in FIFA, which makes perfect sense. But I think the WWE would benefit from him coming, as it would bring their fans, and it bring a lot of revenue and business. And like I mentioned earlier, it's strange. I mean, seeing a player switch sports, even like in the middle of their career, is just crazy to me. I feel like that doesn't happen very often. Early in their career, yes, like 16, 17, they switch to another sport, soccer to football, football to baseball, baseball to this. It happens, but so late in their career, it's interesting to me, and I'm curious a little bit if he would be the oldest wrestler. I'm not sure if there's an older wrestler than him, but my God, he's freaking huge. That's one thing that's always made him stand out, is the fact that guy's like strong, really strong. And for a soccer player, that's like, he's basically a bodybuilder who plays soccer, like professional soccer. So it's like, that's what kind of helped bring his popularity up. And it's gonna be interesting to see if this move goes through and how it benefits him and how it benefits the WWE. So moving on to my number 3, this is the one that I said, this is a player that I've been watching for a while, and he hasn't been playing, so naturally, but in FIFA, I loved using Freddy Adu, who has just joined the Swedish side Osterlen. Now, he is currently 31 years old. He last played in the USL for the Las Vegas Lights in 2018, and he just said that he missed the sport, and he's happy to have the opportunity to be playing again. Now, Freddy Adu, for those of you who don't know, was an American international who was the youngest male player signed to a professional contract when he joined DC United at 14 years old, and he had a massive amount of hype for him. I mean, think Messi joining Barcelona at 13. He had a huge amount of hype around him, but he was never able to reach the heights that were expected of him. And I feel like, personally for me, I feel like it was the publicity around him that never really, it just put so much pressure on him, and not everyone thrives under pressure. A lot of people crack, and I think he cracked, and he could never really fulfill the potential that was set upon him. And honestly, him joining this club, hopefully this is just a chance for him to do, like he mentioned, to do what he loves, and maybe he'll find some success. Who knows? He's 31. He's really not down and out yet. I mean, if he's been keeping up with his body, his training, and all that, then clearly he's really not down and out. So, from just a human being point of view, I want to see him be happy and do something that he loves, and I really hope that he does find some kind of success with this new side. Now, next one is Erling Haaland scored a hat trick for Norway versus Romania in a 4-0 win. Recently, he's been forming a nice... Well, in that game, it's kind of showing of signs of a partnership with Martin Odegaard, who plays for Real Madrid. Erling Haaland plays for Borussia Dortmund. And I wanted to bring this up because it's a bit interesting. Norway... I was going to say Finland. Norway are a relatively smaller country when it comes to, the grander scale, Euros, World Cup, and they've only been to the World Cup 3 times. In 1938, they finished in the round of 16, 1994 in the group stage, and in 1998 in the round of 16. And it's interesting to see some nations who haven't had much success, at that bigger level, start to have talent cropping up and players who can lead them in the future. I think it's personally good for the World Cup. I mean, you take a look at the last one, it was already showing signs of a shifting dynamic in the powers. Like, it's not quite, Brazil, Germany, France, Spain, and Italy. Like, it's not just them anymore. You have to consider everyone. I mean, look at Croatia. Look at the run they made to the final. Look at Russia. They made it to the quarterfinals, albeit they didn't play the most exciting brand of football, but they made it. The point is, they beat big teams along the way. They beat Spain along the way. They beat Uruguay along the way. They beat teams that, should have beaten them. and they finally fell to the eventual finalists in Croatia. So I like seeing smaller teams, smaller nations in general. I like seeing them shine and come up and actually make an impact in tournaments and games. And I'm very interested to see Norway and watch them and see if, maybe they can manage some other players who are developing and really help build a team. I know it's a little more difficult at a national level, like a club level, you could just buy a player and start building a team around, your best. Whereas at national level, you got to kind of rely on the clubs, training them, giving them game time. So it's, all that. So I'm very curious to see if he can potentially lead them anywhere. Even a win in the World Cup, who knows? But I'm interested to see, these younger players who don't play for the big nations step up and lead their teams to potential glory. So I just thought that was interesting. I thought it brought up something, much bigger and more impactful on the world of international soccer. So my fifth and final highlight of the week is Federico Higuain just joined his brother Gonzalo Higuain at Inter Miami in the MLS. And I just thought it was interesting because I didn't realize how often brothers actually play together on the same team in football and soccer. And I just thought it brought up, I just out of curiosity, even before I decided to make this a highlight, I just genuinely looked it up. Like, how many brothers, do you see? And honestly, quite a bit. So I grabbed like 4 examples here, 5, I think. Bobby and Jack Charlton won the World Cup together for England and actually had their own, solid individual careers. They didn't play together at a club level, I'm pretty sure, but they like I mentioned, they won the World Cup with England. Yaya and Kolo Toure were together at Manchester City. Yaya Toure is obviously was a huge figure at Manchester City, and to be joined by his brother is pretty cool. Andre and Jordan Ayew are players that I personally knew. Well, the next 3 are all ones I knew, like, for sure. Andre and Jordan Ayew played for Swansea at one point, and they both play for Ghana. They're beloved. They're beloved by the fans, and rightfully so. They're both good players. Next you have Jonathan and Giovanni Dos Santos, who play for LA Galaxy. I knew about them for a while because I was following the MLS for a little bit. Then it got a little boring, I'm going to be perfectly honest. But they both play for Galaxy, and they both play for Mexico at an international level. And then for me, the ones I personally knew for the longest is Eden and Torgan Hazard, who were both at Chelsea at one point. Obviously, one had way more success than the other. Eden, being a huge club legend now, essentially, and getting his big move to Real Madrid. Torgan eventually getting his move to Borussia Mönchengladbach, and eventually to Dortmund, where he's honestly doing incredibly well right now. I mean, he was doing well at Mönchen, but he's doing well right now at Dortmund, and I'm glad to see it. I hate when we let talent go and they thrive at another club, but like Tariq Lamptey this season. But I am glad to see them, shine. It's just frustrating. It's more frustration at the club for letting them go. But these are just some examples of siblings that have been able to play together, and I found it interesting how often it actually happens. But usually in almost all the examples, one brother is simply better or more successful than the other one, or finds their top gear faster than the other brother, whether it be at international level, club level. Like Bobby and Jack Charlton won the World Cup together, but Bobby, in my opinion, had the better individual career. So normally one of them comes out better than the other by a large margin. I believe Socrates played with his brother. Rio Ferdinand played with his brother. It's crazy. Like, these are icons who played with their brothers, and it's cool. I just thought it was very interesting to see siblings playing together in the sport. But yeah, those are my top 5 highlights of the week. What do you guys think about Project Big Picture? Do you think it was a good idea? Do you agree with me? Do you think it was a bad idea? Do you think it was just a power grab? Do you think it really was going to benefit the Premier League in the long run? Adebayo Akinfenwa, if you know him, how do you feel about him moving to the WWE? And in general, how would you feel if one of your best players suddenly switched sports? What would your opinion be if a club legend you had who is just about to retire switches sports? What are your thoughts on players just generally switching sports, especially towards the end of their career? Freddy Adu, if you know him, how do you feel about his move? Do you think, are you hopeful for him? Are you hopeful that maybe he finds success like I am? Or I mean, in general, as a player, like, how do you feel when a player just doesn't find success? Do you want to see them succeed? Do you think they just should move on? What are your thoughts on that kind of situation? How do you feel about smaller nations potentially closing the gap on these bigger nations in tournaments like the World Cup, the Euros, the Copa America? How do you feel about these smaller teams closing the gap? And brothers in football, would you play with your brother if you have one at a professional level? Would it bother you? Would it help you? Would it push you? What are your guys' thoughts on, having a brother or a sister, or either one, having a sibling? Let's go with that. Having a sibling in sports. How would you feel about having your sibling play on the same team as you? And yeah, those are my 5 highlights of the week. I hope you guys enjoyed. If you did, please leave a like and subscribe. Go check out my socials. My Twitter is @BlueHermit1. My Instagram is @BlueHermit_. Please share the socials with all your friends, family, everybody you know. I'll see you guys later. Bye.